We are now recording.
I will call this meeting of the Mount Escutney School District Board to order. Okay. Changes and additions to the agenda. Is Ethan Lawrence on here?
I don't see him. There's Julie Cahoon.
Ethan said he would be a little bit late, but that he's coming. And I'm sitting in for. Thank you.
Jeff Rogers. Okay. All right. So the first item on our agenda is changes to the agenda, of which, believe it or not, I don't have any today.
Let's record this moment.
I know.
The only change we have is that a lot of the Mount Escutney budget discussion we'd like to do at the end of the meeting in executive session because it involves personnel and some personnel changes.
Actually, I would like to, can we move the budget down towards the end?
Yeah, that's exactly our plan.
And then I'd like to move the anti-racism update up to the top, if that's all right. Well,
that's perfect. Or
let's
just do it.
Let's make it C.
Okay.
Okay.
If you've made that note, that's good.
Okay. Okay. Next we have approval of minutes. I'll take a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting.
Amy,
Second.
So moved.
Angie, I see your blue. I hear your blue. Do you have a comment about the minutes?
I'm having a difficult time hearing it clearly. I can hear you talking, I just can't hear it clearly. I requested to discuss the community forum for a few minutes. If we can move that up in the agenda, please.
Sure thing. We'll put it.
Yeah, and that's actually going to come into my report too, but we can do it twice if we have to. Somebody's on the phone. I'm not sure if that's the person you asked about, or was it?
Okay. Does anybody have any comments about the minutes from our last meeting? I see and hear no blues. Anybody? Okay. Then I will do a roll call to see who approves of the minutes, and I'll starting at the top of my list. I've got Amy.
Aye.
Bill. Bill Yates. I'll come back to you.
Trying to get his volume on it too.
Davis McGraw.
Aye.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Aye.
Hi. All right. And let's see. I know. I see you. I'm just going in order. Nancy.
Aye.
And Rebecca.
Aye.
And I am an aye. Okay. Now the next item on our agenda this evening is public participation and announcements. Anybody?
This is Amy. I do have one announcement to our school board members that if you haven't already registered for the VSBA virtual conference, I highly recommend that you do so. You can learn a lot from other school board members across the state about what is happening throughout the state.
And that is taking place this week.
Yeah.
That is correct, Thursday and Friday.
Okay. Are there any other announcements or public participants? Okay. Then I will move on to principals' reports.
Kate, do you want to do yours?
Yeah, since you're in that room. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you, Kate.
Just checking because my internet's a little bit weird. I'm going to share my screen. You can see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay. I know that at our meeting, a big topic was our staffing updates. And now that the vaccine mandate has gone into an update of what's going on in the buildings, I will say that this is accurate as of today. And that statement should tell you kind of how fluid it is. So at Windsor, we had one special educator resign. We have one support staff member that is no longer coming in. We had one support staff member resign, and that was a brand new hire who had just worked a couple of days and then decided it wasn't for them. Amy, did you have a question?
Yeah, could you do me a favor and put that on present mode?
Oh, sure. Sorry.
Because I can't read that without putting my nose right to the. Thank you.
Me degree and is going to work as our perma sub. And we're keeping in mind that we have one maternity leave this spring and one high school staff member going out on a sabbatical. We do need a reading interventionist, and we're working as a team with Jennifer, Brittany, Angie Ledoux, and Bridget Ferriel to come up with some solutions.
We can't hear you, Kate.
What that
Today's wonky.
Still cutting out, Kate.
Yeah, it might be your internet. I'm not sure. She's going out, and I think she's gonna come back in.
All right, well, she's doing that. Do you want me to share from mine since we're at the SU and maybe we've got some good resources here?
Great.
Oh, there's Kate again.
Yeah, I shut off my camera to see if that.
Yeah, I think it's your internet.
Let's go to here. Sure. All right, can everybody see this?
Yes.
Okay, let me go back. Okay, so staffing update. So we're looking to find, as Kate was talking about, we're looking to find somebody who can support particularly reading intervention at Windsor schools. There's sort of kids at the younger levels that need some supports. And so we're trying to figure out ways to create the supports for the kids and identifying additional needs or possible solutions to that need. Then we have at Elder Bridge, we've had a support staff resign. We have an SEI BI who are general ed working to support the special education needs of students because we don't have staffing in the special education world, which is pulling away from the original goals of the SEI and the BI. And we're looking for, and this is an interesting copy, but I can finalize that statement. We are looking to hire a full-time permanent sub because at Albert Bridge, we have been down 4 average daily support staff across the board that have been out of the building is over 4 people a day. So we're looking for somebody because when you have all that flex, it's hard to create stability for kids. Next is, let's see. I wonder, Colleen or Kate, if either of you can speak to some of this. COVID updates at Windsor?
Sure.
And then,
Sure. We have roughly 62% for our vaccination rate in the high school. We've had 1 4th grade class quarantine this month. It was kind of tricky. Our teachers worked together at the rate at which students were able to come back, and they were flexible in some check-ins online at home while supporting the rest of the students that were in the building. And we are no longer tracing outside, and only the seatmates, our seatmates on the bus and our closest seating persons next to us when we do our seating charts. So seating charts and bus seating charts are highly important for us.
Colleen?
Yep.
What's your vaccination rate for grades 6th, 7th, and 8th?
I don't have that number in front of us. I'm not sure. I can check with Elizabeth and share with you tomorrow.
I'm sorry?
I said I don't have that number. I can check with Elizabeth Martins and get back to you tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
We've had some really wonderful athletic accomplishments with our varsity soccer, varsity field hockey, and varsity football all getting to the quarterfinals. Our field hockey and football getting to the semifinals, and games coming up. We're looking for some guidance as to how we proceed with theater productions and live audiences. And we just celebrated Universal Prevention with Red Ribbon Week. And we've also had meetings with our school mentor, prevention staff, guidance counselors, health teachers on what kind of prevention we are looking at in the classroom, which is more targeted and intensive versus more universal, such as Red Ribbon Week. So those are some conversations we want to have as a school to help with substance prevention for future monthly WSCC meetings.
Amy, I see your blue.
Thank you. Just on the guidance for theater shows, I saw somewhere recently that Hartford is putting on their annual musical. They might be a source for guidance to see how it is that they're doing theirs.
Yeah, and NCCT and
Trumbull Hall.
They're all doing live shows with audience fully masked.
Yes,
I don't know.
exactly.
I
And
think
they're all happening in this next week. So,
and I believe that one of the shows is requiring vaccination cards, but not for 12 and under. I think that's what I heard, but I could be wrong.
I heard that as well. And I can't remember if it's the Trumbull Hall at Lebanon Opera House. I think that's the one, but the Woodstock Theater might be requiring it as well for the NCCT show.
Yeah. We also had some teachers go to the Roland conference, taking 3 of our students with them. we're going to be working with Jen Frank, Chief Frank, and having social media education lessons between now and Thanksgiving for our 7th through 12th grade. And our Leader in Me team is working to make the language universal and meeting with our consultant, Barbara Lintner, in the next week and setting our own school goals.
Colleen, I have a couple of questions.
Mm-hmm.
First one is, what's the Roland Conference?
We had some of our teachers went this semester. I believe it. I don't have the details. I can see if Kate has the details with her. I believe it's some of the social justice and equity pieces that
It's
the
also,
students.
sorry, can you hear me?
Go ahead.
I shut off my camera, so my internet will be better. So Elizabeth, the reason why we went and we had sent this out in the beginning, because ideally, one of us would have went to Colleen or David, Colleen, myself, or David or Jennifer. It kind of blends right in with the Leader in Me that we're doing, and it's student ownership over their learning and what they want their school to be. So that's why it was of interest of it. And the team came back really enthused and excited, and they want to put something together to share out at one of our staff meetings. So whatever that presentation is, because it was just on the 27th, would be happy to share with you at the next meeting.
How were the students chosen?
So it was 9 through 12 students, and I'm going to be totally frank, you had to be vaccinated to go. So that was one of the things. And I know if you saw in our report that was we had 62% of our students. And then we looked through student leadership roles and students who had taken an interest in Leader in Me. And I think we invited 6 and 3 went. It's hard to send students to conferences during playoff seasons, to be honest.
Okay, and the other question was, so what do you expect the nature of the conversation over social media to be, Chief Frank? Is it about safety on the internet? Is it about how to deal with other people, and how to deal with peers on the internet? Is it about what's mentally healthy on the internet?
It's kind of so the Windsor Police Department's role in it, and we had their presentation to our staff a couple of years ago, is around like the legalities of it and the permanency of it and the dangers of it. But I spoke to Jen a few days ago, and she's reaching out to other agencies to do exactly that part you're talking about, Elizabeth, the mental wellness part of it and how it's impacting teenagers, specifically teenage girls. So it's going to be a combination of both. And we're also trying to work with some community liaisons to offer some door prizes and stuff like that to make it a really big event so that people come, because we think it's important to hear all those aspects of it.
And is it going to be during school or after school hours?
We're looking at a date that would put it after school hours so parents can come.
But the education pieces with Jen Frank, aren't those are going to be set up during the day with the students?
No, they're going to be at night so the parents can join with the students.
Okay.
I can talk a little bit more about the Roland Foundation. Just to add a few thoughts to what they're doing. So the purpose of the Roland Foundation is to support essentially the process of looking at your own system to create leadership within your student level by engaging them in the process of learning. And what they do is they look primarily at secondary. Sometimes they'll involve middle school teachers as well as students. But the goal is to give them space and time to think about creative options for meeting these student needs in a way that is innovative. So you can have like an actual sabbatical through the Roland Fellowship for some teachers across Vermont. It's a Vermont-based thing. And it's, unfortunately, it does get timed in a way that is hard for students to participate, particularly some of our leaders. But the primary goal is to support students becoming advocates for themselves. So if it's right in line with all of the work we've done with Leader and Me, and the work before that when we're talking about creating students as owners of their own learning.
So when a student, just as a total aside, when a student attends something like this, are they counted as absent, or is it counted as an enrichment program? Is it, how is that counted for them?
I've never had the opportunity to do that, but I know at school when we've had a kid go to do something else, it's not an absence. It's simply them participating at the level that they, so when we think about assessing a kid or giving feedback, you know, when we think about the level 4, if you count the 1 to 4 scale, that's where the 4 would show up.
Okay.
Pretty clearly, but it could look differently at different levels. So I don't know, Kate or Colleen, if you guys specifically Roland Foundation?
No, so we have a standard protocol for all trips like that would require them to miss classes, and it's a form that they get signed by their parents, and then they have to go to each teacher themselves and kind of explain where they're going and why, and check in with their grades and what they'd be missing that day and how they can successfully stay in their class while not being there for the day.
Is there any requirement that they have to, I do need to move on, but is there any requirement that they have to report out to their classmates what they learned?
No, but the students will be a part of the report out to the staff. And then we could go from there if it's something that looks like, hey, we should report this out to our students or start with our student council. That's always something we could do. I got to be honest with you, Elizabeth, this is the first year we had people going off, and this is only my second year, so I'm not that sure.
We'll see how it goes.
There's an absence.
Yep.
No, they will usually report back, and if our teachers go to professional development, they report back to staff. But if we take students and it's field trip, professional learning, they usually report back to the staff, or like Kate said, if it's something we want the student leadership council to hear about, they'll report out there. We'll determine once they present their summary of their day.
Okay, thank you. I apologize for asking so many questions. Rebecca, I see your hand.
Yes, I have 2 questions. One revolves around what you were just talking about, and that is how do students get selected to participate in this enrichment opportunity? And 2, who do students report back to? It's just an interesting process, and I just wonder how that's done, and I appreciate that being explained. The second question was, I thought that the representative from the police department who works with the schools is
Officer Favreau.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering, is he participating in this, or how did it come about that Jen Frank is doing this?
Well, Jen happens to just have a lot of expertise in that area. She did offer similar training in the past when she was the SRO. So we're just kind of working with Jen to organize it. I don't know for sure if Officer Favreau won't be involved, but Jen just has the experience and has done it before. So we're working with her.
Paul's going to be involved, but like Colleen said, Jen is an expert on this. So that's why she would be our go-to. But she's in every meeting, she's mentioned Paul being a part of it.
Thanks, Kate.
And then the students who go to conferences, for the most part, they're usually advertised in the school bulletin, students who are interested through student services. But a lot of times, if it's like a history teacher who's going to the conference or a math teacher going to a conference, sometimes they're usually kind of reaching out to their classes. And then when they report out, they usually report out with the teachers they're going with.
I know that you put out a newsletter often, and I just thought it would be a great idea if down the road maybe those students could, if they are selected, ask if they would be willing to make a statement that would go out in the newsletter to their peers, just to inform their peers of what's going around, after discussing what exactly would go in the newsletter. But I think that would be pretty valuable, just so that their peers have an idea of, these opportunities, and also, these opportunities and what these opportunities are all about.
Okay, thank you very much. Is that it for your presentation?
There were some.
I keep forgetting that. There are a couple of slides, I don't know where they went, maybe I put them in a different one, I'll find them, that have to do with Albert Bridge School specifically.
I thought I saw them.
It's, sometimes it just happens with technology, so I will add them to the slides. I can give you a quick update. We're working on themes. Right now, kindness is a big theme, which goes in line with CARES. For Albert Bridge, we've got reading buddies that are starting up with our community members. Skip has done a fantastic job getting up and running this year. I want to talk a little bit about stress of staff, but that's universal, so I can certainly put that in a different context later. Talk a little bit about, we have one of our PE place-based teacher is not with us currently, and we have 2 days of PE, but no place-based being substituted for, and we are addressing and finding ways, reaching out to WISE about gender stereotypes and how kids respond to issues. But I'll find those slides and add them to once I find them.
I thought
Sorry
I
about
saw
that.
them in there.
Yeah, sometimes things happen. So I'll find them and I'll put them in.
When is he coming back?
Right after Thanksgiving.
Is it, okay.
Yeah. It was an expected leave. Yeah.
Hi.
Okay.
Were you asking? I thought I heard a voice. Oh, that might be Kate's kids.
Is there anything else of principals? Thank you, Jennifer. You're welcome. Kate or Colleen? All right. Thank you all very, very much. I know it's been a really incredible time that you're in, to say the very least. I don't mean to laugh about it. I know that it's really, really hard right now, and I hope there's anything that we can do to help alleviate some of the stress that you're in. So,
We're all in this together.
indeed.
Yeah, Elizabeth, you don't have to apologize for laughing. We laugh every day. I don't want you to think that we're not having a good time or enjoying ourselves every day, because we are. That's one of the ways we get through. So laugh all you want about it. It's what's getting us all through.
One of the best things is that we're just lucky to have the very, very supportive staff who leans on each other, and we look for the positives in each day.
Okay. Thank you all very, very much. Okay, David, you're up.
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen. I can't see you, but I assume everybody can see the screen, right?
Yes.
And some of these things are gonna come under items for discussion, so I'm not gonna spend a ton of time. So I'll just kind of zip through it. I think the principals gave you the hiring updates. It's ongoing across the supervisory union, but it's also in Mount Scottney, and You heard the needs, and some of those are generated by positions we haven't been able to fill. Some of them are generated by people who have left, for one reason or another. But hats off to the principals and to Katie Ahern and Sarah Wellman, who've done a great job keeping those advertisements alive and well, and interviewing several people. So we'll just keep plugging along. COVID update, you heard a lot of this. We did have an exposure at HES this last month and at Windsor.
Wait, I'm sorry.
Want me to go back?
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
What does BCBA or BCABA mean?
Yeah. That is, and I should know this because it is one.
Board certified behavior analyst.
Thank you. I had a brain cramp. Board certified behavior analyst, and the BCABA is, I think it's an associate's level board certified analyst. So it's BCBA is, it's sort of an assist, yeah, like an assistant essentially.
Okay.
So let me go back to presenting here. COVID updates, we kind of talked about those. We did have some exposure, but we're doing less quarantining in general. And I think, again, as we continue to, vaccinate, and, that's important for us. And as we said, we no longer have to contact trace outside for exposure. And we know we only have to quarantine the seatmates in the case of a school bus. So that's helped out some. With COVID, we are working on the winter athletic protocols, which are in development. And I would imagine that we had to do that because winter sports are starting pretty soon. And that will also include protocols around public participation in games. We're hoping we can have some this year, but that might spill over. Colleen and Kate and Jen, I heard you talking about trying to sort out, musicals and those kinds of things. I think what's good for athletics, and vice versa, should be good for theater and music and band concerts and all those good things. So it's a slow process. We just got the general guidelines, very general, from the Agency of Education late last week. So we've been sorting through them. We're getting closer. And like I said, I think we'll, in general, be masked indoors because we're always masked indoors. And I think we will have some crowd participation, but it might be limited. And stay tuned on that. Well, I'll keep updating through my letter. Test to stay, TTS, test to stay. I've been kind of keeping you updated in my email blasts that go out every week. We're hoping to start that as early as next week. Remember, that test to stay is only if we have a close contact and only for the unvaccinated. So it's an interesting protocol. Our nurses are ready for it. They've mustered up some good volunteers to help with the swabbing. It looks like the swabbing will be done in school. We just didn't, as the cold weather started to settle in, we just didn't see parents lining up or kids outside while parents swab noses. We've got much more expertise and much more integrity in the lab environment in the building. So that's what we'll do with the test to stay. And again, at the end of this slide, if there are any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Bill has his hand raised.
Yeah.
Bill, did you have something on test to stay?
No, I just had a quick question about, I could do it after you're done, about vaccinations at the end.
I'll finish this slide and then we can talk about any other questions about COVID. Vaccines for pediatric vaccines and booster vaccines for adults. Again, I put this in my email blast, but Windsor will be a site for both. I think I gave the dates November 19th, and I don't want to do them off the top of my head, and I don't have them with me, but they're in my last update. And essentially, the pediatric vaccines will, of course, with parental permission, will be given in the morning from 9 to 12, and then the adult boosters in the afternoon. And we're going to have, I think Windsor will be a site, Heartland and Wethersfield, and we will figure out a way if any of the Albert Bridge parents register for in-school vaccines that we get those Albert Bridge kids over to Windsor. It's just a matter of setup and takedown with the Vermont Department of Health that sort of prevented, adding a small school like Albert Bridge. But we'll certainly work on that. The idea is to bring the vaccines proximate to the kids. I don't know. I assume most parents will probably want to take their own children to those clinics, but and they can do that during the public sessions in the afternoon. That would be another option for certainly Albert Bridge parents. They could go to those public sessions. All that registration will be on the regular registration portal. Will just end up being a site at those buildings. We do have and I wished I had brought those numbers, but I vaguely remember grades 7 and 8, Elizabeth telling me we were at Elizabeth Martin's, our nurse, we're at about 50% and 62% for 9 through 12. So we're running 50 to 60%, across 3 schools. Jean Chick, who's the nurse at Albert Bridge, emailed me on Friday and told me that from her dates and birth dates, she didn't see anybody right there currently who was eligible. So there's but again, that's changing as we speak, because we're hoping to get those kids, those students, into these clinics to be vaccinated. With all that's going on with Test to Stay and Vaccine for Kids, we've just put surveillance testing on hold. And right now, with all the vaccines being distributed, we're thinking that surveillance testing might be just may not happen right now. So any questions on the COVID stuff?
I've got a question.
Go ahead.
So just to be absolutely clear, parents have to register their children on the VDH portal.
That's correct.
Period. But do they need to get an appointment?
Yes, it'll say, well, what it'll say, and this is what I'm told, and I've been working with Heather Rigney from the Vermont Department of Health Springfield office. What I'm told is when the site pops up, it'll pop up Windsor, it'll say pediatric, and it'll say 9 to 12. So you'll just sign up for that slot, and then the school will decide how we get kids down to that pediatric clinic.
Okay.
Whether we do it by classroom or by alphabetical, we'll figure that out, and the principals all know, and the nurses, that's going to be, that'll be part of our job to make sure the kids feel safe, they feel comforted. It's a quick process. It's interesting. About 60% of our parents that responded to a survey said that they would, they would be interested in, a pediatric vaccine clinic. So it seems like, I don't know whether it's that parents don't like to watch their kids get shots or what. I'm not sure, but we'll do anything we can to get the children vaccinated. Was there another question on COVID or vaccinations or testing or any of that stuff?
Yeah, you already answered it.
Okay, thank you.
How will the winter athletic protocols be rolled out?
Yeah, well, we have a COVID handbook for athletics, and so we're updating that handbook. So that'll get rolled out through that handbook. It certainly will go to all coaches, players, and I'll probably put a link to it in my email blast. I think I'll have it. I think we'll have it. We're pretty close. I think we'll have it by this Friday. So that's my hope, and I'll get it out. There won't be any big surprises in there. I think one of the things that got debated at the Southeast Superintendent's meeting was whether or not, we wanted to up the ante and require vaccinations for athletes, but we couldn't get to consensus on that, and there was just this general thought that students, and this would also be true for concerts or theater, some of the students who are not vaccinated by their choice. They're not vaccinated by parent choice. And we just don't want to limit those extracurricular activities for students because of decisions that rightfully so their parents are making. So I think we'll just mask up. We'll be careful. We'll handle it just like the school day. Coaches are pretty well trained in keeping kids distanced, and we will. And right now, there's general agreement in the Southeast that there'll be no visiting fans. So if we're playing, say, Springfield fans will not be coming to our gym because we can supervise our own fans and make sure they keep their masks on and that they are spread out according to family in little family pods, but we can't do that with visiting teams. So we right now, we're leaning toward no visiting fans at Windsor.
I do have a question. I do have a question for you.
Yeah.
Throughout our district and statewide and really nationally, there are accommodations not being made for students who have immunity problems. I wondered what our district and our supervisory union are doing to help accommodate those students. I mean, I know of in our community, a couple of families who are homeschooling all of their children as a result of having one or more people with compromised immunity systems.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I hate to put it in these terms, but it kind of goes against our state constitution. Is there anything that we can do to?
That's a great question. I mean, we've certainly, and I know the nurses work on this all the time. I mean, there are, right now it's masking and vaccinations, and we haven't had those pediatric vaccinations under the age of 12. My understanding, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, that if you have a compromised immune system, right?
Or you have a sibling who does.
Or a sibling who does, and I don't think this is what you're asking, but all the more reason to be vaccinated, right? Yeah. So then what the school would do, I think, if we knew that that was the case, and I think our nurses try to identify those kids, is you might provide, a little more distance, a little regular check-in, but that's a good question. I mean, I don't know. I know that parents have chosen to homeschool, and I think that's their choice, right?
Well, it's their choice because they feel that the school hasn't provided a safe environment for their children. I mean, that's the truth.
Yeah.
If you ask them that, that's what they will say.
Yeah.
And, the burden is on us to provide for them. The burden shouldn't be on parents having to quit a job to homeschool their kid because the district isn't providing what they need to keep their kids safe.
Yeah, I don't know, beyond what we're already doing, I don't know what we would do, I mean, our mitigations right now are masking, some distancing, sanitizing. And I think no matter how much of that you do in our staff.
Air handling.
And the air handling units and that air exchange, I mean, those are the mitigations we've used, and but I still think even with those mitigations, you're going to have parents who, including one of my grandchildren, I mean, they are either so compromised or so nervous about that compromise. I don't think any mitigation is going to, but if a parent had a thought or an idea, we would certainly, we'd consider it, Yeah, it's a tough one. It's a good question, but it's a tough one.
Amy and then Kate.
It seems to me that our school district is doing everything that it possibly can and is within what is being allowed as far as more restrictive environment by the state. And the state is providing the guidelines and we are adhering to those guidelines. So it seems to me unless the state starts getting a little bit tougher, we're doing all that we can.
Yeah, one of the things we're hoping along those lines, Amy, is that we've been hearing that the Vermont Department of Health and the agency, and sort of in consultation with each other, might start, mandating student vaccines, much like they do with other vaccines. We have a lot of vaccines right now that are required. Now there are religious exemptions and all of that stuff, medical exemptions, but in general, a student can't register for school without, polio vaccine, MMR, all the things that you get when you're going through those pediatric vaccines. But so far they haven't done that.
I mean, and they won't do it for an emergency.
Oh, right, exactly. Till it's right. That's what we're hoping that the FDA can get beyond the emergency order into a full-fledged order, and then maybe that'll happen. I would not be surprised.
Kate, right?
Just this, Amy, one more time. It's the same with towns in the state that they can't require masking. The governor said that unless he reinstates the state of emergency, that nothing can be mandated.
Except at school.
Right, and that's what I said earlier, is that I am sure that we are doing right up as much as the state will allow us to do in terms of keeping kids safe.
If a student had and I don't know if Kate's going to go into this as well, but if a student had a diagnosed immunity issue, they would probably also be on an IEP or a 504. And so then you would create a situation to create a least restrictive environment for that student, which may have them in a separate classroom with a separate aide. But besides that happening, besides a parent actually saying, this in showing this, I think we're doing all that we can.
Why would a student with an immunity, I mean, just out of curiosity, I guess I realize that I don't understand special ed.
Can you guys hear me? So my son is this kid that we're talking about. He is immune compromised. Taking him home from the hospital is a yearly event in our house. And since since the state of emergency is gone, like Amy said, like I did have a hard time with, particularly because he has 3 siblings in the building. What are we going to do to keep him safe? And it was simply opening up communication between his doctor and the school nurse. So he doesn't have a 504 or an IEP, but he has a medical plan that's pretty simple to follow. And in his case, it's just it has to do a lot with the weather change. And so because he has a diagnosis, so every time he has an asthma attack, he does not have to be tested for COVID. Like they take it on his doctor's word, which is a huge stress, relief for us. And it's simple things like coming to the nurse's office to wash his hands before and after specials, things like that. I think I would encourage anyone who does want to send their kid back to school, but would fear that they would need to ask more, to just have their doctor connect with the nurse and see what we could work out that would be comfortable for all. But I think what Amy and what Bill and what David has said, with the current restrictions we can put in place, I don't know what else we could do.
So, but just to clarify, thank you, Kate. I appreciate you sharing that with us. Just to clarify what Bill was saying, an immunocompromised student, Katie, you can answer this.
Yeah, Katie's the one.
Wouldn't necessarily be on an IEP, or would they? Does special education extend to?
Yes and no. That Kate could do this, but basically it all depends on, does it interfere with their education? And if it interferes on their education, there's a possibility they may qualify for an IEP if there's additional services required. Okay. I know of students who are on a medical plan and on a 504 because of their issue. But most students, as Kate pointed out, most students at that level are on a medical plan, which doesn't go to the height of a 504 and IEP. So the answer is yes, they could be all 3 of those. But most students with a medical issue are covered with a medical plan.
Okay, Katie, thank you, Bill. Katie, I see your hand.
Sorry, I went to hit the hand to answer and instead of the microphone. So following what Bill said, there's a high correlation between students sometimes who are on IEPs for multiple reasons that also are immunocompromised. But what Kate said, any family that has reached out, whether they end up on a medical plan or they're already in an IEP or anyone else, or any other kind of plan, we've been able to meet those requirements and work with the family in a wide range of ways. So from the very beginning of all of this, when we came back in person last year, so I wanted to put that out there that we have, but to again, what Kate said, encourage families to reach out. And I think we have a pretty good open conversation with most of the home study families that I know about, which is not all, but there are some other things we can do that are in line with what the state says, but also goes on along the lines of accommodations and modifications to the environment that we can reasonably do. There's some stuff we can't, but there's certainly a lot more we can do on an individual case-by-case basis.
Thank you. Jennifer, I see your hand.
So I just want to talk a little bit about what maybe I think from what I've heard from the families who have said that they don't feel okay sending their kids. First of all, if you have an immune compromised system and it doesn't interfere with your education, in traditional times you don't necessarily have the IEP or a 504 plan because it doesn't interfere. And what we had happen is COVID struck and it impacted kids in a different way and families in a different way because of the intensity and frequency of the experience. And then we gave the choice for people to do homeschooling or doing remote learning last year. And now we've got homeschooling. So or home study. And what we have, I think, happening are those who felt less comfortable, not that we won't try to accommodate them, but the environment itself may not be safe enough for their child. And so what I think, as I've heard from the families that I've talked with, it's about how do we create a safe enough environment in that experience for me to send my kids back. So these children don't necessarily have an IEP or 504 because prior to COVID, they were able to access school in a way that was not feeling so threatening to the families. And then the families pulled back saying, I'm not comfortable with this new thing that we don't know enough about. And then we created this new process where I'm either doing home study or for a while remote. And now they're in this position where they've been out and they don't know when, and nor does anybody necessarily know, when is it safe enough to put your child back in when they have these really high sensitivities to the environmental challenges of COVID and things going around. And I'm not sure that what Katie's saying is we're going to try, and Kate has said, we try to put supports in place so we're not creating disruption to the child's learning if they're in our environment. What we don't have is a way to say, if you're outside of our environment already, if you've chosen to home study your child for various reasons, how do we make it safe enough for you to feel like you can have your child back in when maybe they're not even the ones who are immune compromised, but their siblings, right? And so that's I think a systems approach that we don't yet have the answer, primarily because we're limited in resources and it's a new experience. I'm sure over time, if we experience this long enough, we'll come up with, here's what we know is safe and we can predictably do and you feel safe enough sending your kid. But I don't know that we're there yet.
Anybody else's hands up? I can't see the screen.
Sorry, I didn't mean to waylay us. I apologize. But it's been a burning question for me.
Yeah, I bet it is. I bet it is because we miss those kids and we want to get them back.
Yeah.
And I think we will eventually. I know we're going to talk about this later, so I won't spend a lot of time. We've got small groups right now meeting this month or the last couple of months to put some action steps to basically 10 benchmark areas that Melissa pointed out, Dr. Crum, who was our consultant over the summer. And in addition, we also have a group of people meeting with Dr. Lavelle Brown on a statewide leadership network to continue our focus on anti-racism and issues of equity. So I feel like the initiative carries on. We've got some very committed people who are on the task force, and I know we're going to talk a little bit more later on under items for discussion. So if there aren't any questions, I'll just keep moving. Budget overview, Mount Scottney budget. We'd like to do the initial overview, the conceptual overview in executive session because it does relate to personnel, and we don't want to do that publicly right now. The SU budget, we've got one more meeting this Friday with the budget committee. Rebecca Roisman is the Mount Scottney representative on that committee. We hope to have a recommendation to the supervisory union board at their November 22nd meeting, and because that number is critical, it's important to get that expenditure line done, because that translates into our assessments. That translates into our assessments in the local districts. And Angie, this is where you could either chime in now, or we could wait and do it under items for discussion. I just wanted to point out. The difference.
He's talking right now about so yeah.
I wanted to point out, Angie, can you hear me?
Yes.
I just wanted to point out, I'm just trying to point out the difference in this slide between the ESSER forms that you and Brittany are providing, and then I know the Mount Scottney School District has talked about other types of forms, and I think that's also under items for discussion tonight. But did you want to take a minute now and talk about what you and Brittany have planned for November 8th?
Sure, I will. So it's an hour-long presentation, and the first 30 or 40 minutes or so, probably less than that, Brittany starts by going over the recovery plan and talks about the pillars of recovery. And then we go into the funding sources. So it's like an educational opportunity for what the funding sources are, leading us up to ARP ESSER 3, and how this community forum is to get feedback on what we've been doing to date, and what we need to keep doing, and what we might need to change or add to the strategies that we've been using in this recovery period as defined by the Agency of Education. So the last 20-25 minutes or so is for community discussion, questions and answers. When we had it at Heartland, there was, it was just a discussion about what we'd like to see happening, what we could hope for in the next couple years during the recovery period.
All right. Looking forward to it. And that's for us, it's Monday, the 8th, and it's at the town offices. Is that right?
Yes, that's my understanding. I think Davis did finally get.
Davis scored the fancy pants town offices.
I want to make sure.
Room.
Okay, we had somebody wanting to get in, so I just had to go there and do that. Now we'll go back here. So next, and I think this might be the end. What did you see it? This is the last piece, and Larry wants to present to us tonight as part of my report, at least a preliminary outline of a capital expenditure that we're contemplating. The board would have to vote on this, obviously. So I'll let Larry take it from here, and I'll stop presenting.
All right, I'm going to share my screen. So what I'm going to share with you tonight is a, that's coming. Okay. Let me present it. So what I'm sharing with you tonight is a project that was kind of started and up and running before I was put into this new role in September. And David handed it off to me. And so he wanted me to report out to you tonight on this one project. Now, obviously no vote is expected tonight. This would be something that would go off in RFP in the spring. Right, so there's no rush on this. This is just a heads up. This was brought from Craig, our food services director. The principals, Colleen and Kate, have seen it, and We've gotten good feedback from the principals and obviously David. So I'm just going to go through upgrading our 25-year-old dining hall. Some of these notes are from the food services director. A renovation, which you'll see in a second, that will be more school spirit, modern, flexible seating, which to me is pretty important. You know, you want a seating arrangement like we did at the hub in the high school area, where it's no longer just, you know, book racks and chairs and desks. It's more flexible seating, so it could be used as a meeting space, a community space, less of an institutional feel, which will fit nicely with the quality of the program and the food, and you know, a space that we can students will be respectful of and build and have pride in their school and community. And visiting 8th graders too, I think of those tuition students from Heartland and from Weathersfield that come through and visit. If they come in through the front door on the high school side, the first thing they see is usually the dining hall. So we just want to give you one example of some of the seating that'd be available. I'm going through this a little quick. I will share it with the board after. This is what you would see if you were looking from the area where you walk in. So if you walk in from up above and you're kind of looking down, that's what that blowout would be. The elevator would be behind that Windsor High School little green, for example, that curved area.
What's the capacity in that picture?
The capacity in this picture would be roughly half the high school. So we do an A lunch and a B lunch, and it would fit. Right now, our high school number is 244, which is the highest it's been since 2009. So that would be an A and B lunch. And the principals had some good thoughts about keeping the capacity the same, but changing some of the seating. So what you're seeing is, obviously this is not a finished product. This is just one example. We would go out to RFP in the spring, and you would, if the board approved it, we would break ground in the summer. This is looking, RFP is request for proposal. So we put that on the website, and people who do this kind of work would reply with their bids. We create a matrix for the bid, and then we pick a person, a team. This would be looking down from the elevator. So if you're looking down from the elevator area. Now, I threw out, there's dozens of possible scenarios, but I threw out 3 scenarios. And again, you could mix and match, trade them with your friends. You could do any sort of things as a board. But just to give you an idea of the possibilities here, the first scenario would be, as you know, you have a pretty large fiscal year 21 surplus, and you have a healthy, not a number I would be comfortable with long term, but a healthy capital reserve balance of roughly $319,000. And your surplus for fiscal year 21 is $985,000. Now the voters are the ones who get to decide where that surplus goes. So one example would be if you provided tax relief to the voters of $200,000, and then you move the remainder of that money as a warrant into the capital reserve, then you would spend out. I chose a number of 140,000. You would pick a number with a board vote. It would be something, David, correct me if I'm wrong, something not to exceed a number. So I just picked 140. We have a quote of has done similar work, and it came out to 140. So whatever number you chose in the spring, not to exceed, you would still have a new balance, capital reserve balance of 964 under that scenario. The second scenario would be the voters just approved to put all the surplus into the capital reserve, which would bring it up to almost 1.3 million in your capital reserve balance. Then you build the dining hall, and now you're at 1.1 in your capital reserve balance. Scenario 3, again, these are all just possible scenarios. These are just different ways to show how building a new dining hall would be feasible. The third one is kind of interesting. So David tasked me as part of this new role, and he knows it's not going to happen tomorrow, but my hope was this spring, summer, would be to come up with a 3-year and 5-year capital plan working with Jim. That would be a public document that the board would view, and it could be up on the website. It would be known to the voters. 3 and 5-year plan of the things that you want to do for capital improvements. If you did that, I asked Jim what would be the biggest, most urgent needs at each school. And using this scenario 3, you could provide, with your capital reserve balance and a fiscal year 21 surplus, you could provide $200,000 of tax relief, build the dining hall, add a new roof for ABS, Albert Bridge School, and the burners, which are the most urgent need for Windsor School, not the boilers themselves, but the burners are the most urgent need right now. And you would still have a capital reserve balance of over $700,000, which is more than double your current capital reserve balance. So again, you could do this any number of ways. I think this should be a board. Obviously, it is a board decision. And frankly, this is a voter decision too when it comes to the actual surplus, not to the projects within the capital reserve balance, but when there is a surplus to move it into capital reserve, correct, David?
Correct.
So that's all I had today. If you have any questions, I'll take them. I don't know how much I can answer tonight, but I just want to put this on in front of your eyeballs. So something to think about as you get into budget season and as you start to build those warrant articles for the budget season.
Yep.
Some ideas you could have for January, February-ish.
Thank you, Larry. That was a very thoughtful plan. Does anybody have any questions for Larry? Davis.
Hey, and thanks for laying out the different ways that we can go about paying for that and in so much detail. This is less of a question, it's more of an observation looking at the designs you showed us. I know those aren't finalized designs, just kind of a rough idea. I do wonder if this kind of revamping of that, very public student space might also present some opportunities for, for some student arts engagement. I noticed there were some walls that seemed to be kind of like blank white walls, and I wonder if that might be a good opportunity to have, students and faculty collaborate on a mural. With the anti-racist curriculum kind of coming into effect too, there could be an opportunity to tie that in as well. So I just wanted to kind of throw that in there as an idea. It's not often that those opportunities do arise, and if there's spaces that in this change process can be considered, I think that could be a really positive move.
Yeah, and I think that's a good observation, and that's something I can work with Colleen and Kate and Craig if we move forward with this idea, then we could maybe, I don't want to speak for Craig, and Kate, but Colleen, we could take a piece of the wall, right? You could take one of the walls and set it aside just for students. I know that Craig has sent out emails for this current school year, something with those bare walls. That it's something we used to have student artwork there. And then it got painted over, I think 2 years ago. It was right pre-COVID, I think, is when it got painted over. And then, of course, we never painted it during COVID. So that's something I know Craig is working with the high school art teacher on. So maybe going forward, this would be something we could use. Some of the plans where a lot of it's not murals, it's not paint, it's the decals, the big decals on part of it, and then have maybe another part of it would be for that student voice.
Definitely, yeah. I think just any opportunity, especially when you're revamping a space like that, to really intentionally incorporate student voice and consider school-wide initiatives, and curriculum initiatives and all that, just to make it as holistic an update as possible. But it's great to hear there's some of that already being considered, at the moment. Thanks.
Yeah, and it would be consistent. We had a big mural project planned last summer through the Vermont Learning Network, and it sort of, for a variety of reasons, didn't happen. But it also had a justice and equity sort of theme and mood to it. So Davis, that's a great suggestion.
Wendy, and then Colleen.
Can't hear you, Wendy.
In looking at your numbers, are you including a new floor as far as the dining hall? Because I know it just got replaced, so I'm just curious if part of that plan is including numbers for replacing it again, or you're talking just the tables, chairs, and the sidewalls, exterior type things.
Yes, great question. As far as my understanding is, and again, we haven't put out the RFP. This was one quote from one vendor, so I want to make it that clear. We haven't picked the vendor or anything. That did not include the floor.
Okay.
Right.
And my second question is, is this going to be something that's going to be shared with the public, or so that you can kind of get their input on this type of planning, or how does that work exactly? Do the public get to know about this before the decision, or do the board just makes the decision and then they kind of get the information after?
Yeah, so that's part of what I'm doing right now, right? So what we didn't want to do is spring it on people in the spring and be like, hey, you have a lot of money now. They put it in capital reserve. We want to tap this. This will be, so the hope would be that once we could share this on the website, and then we could, this will obviously be in the video and in your minutes, Wendy, and I could send you the thing. And then that my thinking would be, once the board has made a decision with the capital reserve money, that in the spring, we would reintroduce this and it would be on the budget. It would say, on the agenda, it would say new dining hall, Windsor High School dining hall. And then I think that would get the public aware, and they could attend the meeting and give their thoughts.
If I were to look at tonight's agenda, I would have never in a million years known that this topic was on the agenda, just totally talking pure honesty. It's a fairly substantial idea, and, not seeing it verbatim in any fashion, the public wouldn't have necessarily known to look for this. So it's exciting stuff. And I think the more we can be transparent so that they can watch and do this live, that's the better off we'll be.
Yep. No, that I think when we get there in the spring, that's why I want to do this really, really early, so everybody's aware of it.
Thank you, Wendy. Colleen, you are next, and then Amy.
Yeah, I would just want to address what Davis had asked about student space and murals on the walls. We try to be pretty intentional about our mural spaces. We have like 4 major focal points where there have been big murals in the past. Some have been painted over. We want to consider those decisions thoughtfully with our fine arts department when we put up those murals. We try to think about the students and keeping the murals for 3 to 4 years in their high school career before we paint over. So anything that we would be thinking about with anti-racism, or anything with our school mission, our strategic plan, our portrait of the graduate, those would probably be kind of more thoughtful in like major locations, like the entryway of the high school foyer. Our cafeteria is kind of a focal point at one of the entrances, but it's also the cafeteria, kind of the same way the library hub and the gymnasium are places that we'd keep looking a certain way. So I personally would probably be more interested in some of those entryway locations, kind of where mission statements and things like that are for the mural work that you're talking about, Davis. But again, it's just stuff that we want to be very thoughtful of, because we have had murals in the cafeteria and painted over at least twice already, and we want to be thinking about the long term, especially with an upgrade. Like when we did the media center and the hub, we upgraded it with the furniture. The technology in that room is what went on the walls. So we wanted to be purposeful for the space.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks for providing some additional detail there. Yeah, I think being intentional about any kind of student work and I mean, anything that alters the appearance or the flow of the environment makes a lot of sense. So it's great to know that that's already an ongoing consideration.
Amy?
Thank you. This is kind of in reply to Wendy's comment. When we start putting our budget together and talking more about that, we'll be talking about the tax relief and how much we want to go into capital reserve. And because it has to be approved by our voters, we would probably be quite vocal on some of the plans on how we wanted to spend that, at least in the first part. So I think upcoming meetings, Wendy, will be talking a lot about, and also it'll be more of a separate agenda item as we talk about the budget.
Anybody else? Before we end,
That's my report. That's
the report. I just want to clarify that because I had to find it the other day and had never been there before. The town offices are inside the great big building in the on
Union Street.
Union Street. You have to go in through the police department and go straight to the elevator and take the elevator up one floor. You'll find it there. If you want to appear in person. Okay. I'm embarrassed to say I've never been up there before, and I had to go out and ask, but now I know. Okay, items for discussion. Budget, we're moving to executive session.
Correct.
The next thing is Angie, I think are you satisfied? Do you have more to say about the November 8th?
I think we're good.
Okay, then let's talk about the school lunch coordinator, and then we'll talk about anti-racism.
Yeah. And do you remember, Elizabeth, who put this on the agenda?
I did.
Okay, good. There you go. I'm glad because I couldn't joggle my memory banks, but.
Well, at our last supervisory union meeting, we all agreed that we would take the question of
Of a program coordinator. Okay, good.
Back to our individual boards and then bring it back to the SU board. And I remembered.
Well
put it
done.
on our agenda. So, the question before us was, I can tell you, about whether we want to have a school lunch program coordinator. And so I'm just going to ask, is there anybody who has strong feelings against having a school lunch program coordinator? It's a permanent position. It's not just a one-off project. It's adding how much?
Staff. We're estimating about $70,000. About $70,000.
And that, Nancy, I see you. So about $70,000 annually, representing one position.
It would be one position.
Okay. So,
and just to set it in context, because it came up a while ago at a supervisor union meeting. Right now, in Craig's mind, he has a culinary coordinator who handles all of the menu planning, culinary piece. And then the other side of this would be the program coordinator. And that program coordinator would have some curriculum background, some school background, and would have some, would be able to work with students and teachers and kids on, and the community on the school program.
okay, I see Nancy and Rebecca's hands, but first I'd like to ask the first question. What is the top of the salary scale for teachers?
For teachers, it's in about, well, I can tell you exactly. It's bottom right-hand corner, which would be the top. Bill, you probably know this and have it memorized. Are we close to 80,000 at this point? Bill, you don't have your volume on. Bill's putting his volume on.
Yeah, I keep hitting my mute button on my new set of headphones.
You've got those salary schedules right at your fingertips.
Yeah, basically, salary range for teachers goes basically from 44 to 78 on the current contract.
Okay,
Which
and
is-
for a person being paid roughly $70,000 a year, what kind of qualifications do they have?
Teaching, you mean?
Teaching, yeah.
Yeah, they would have a master's. Yeah,
So we would be hiring a master's
it
level.
would be a master's level. That's how I see it. And that 70,000, in my mind, that 70,000 would be benefits included in case the person wanted benefits, right? So they wouldn't make a salary of 70,000, but they would have probably a salary in the 60 range with the medical benefits
I
provided.
did master's plus 15, step 6, the family health.
Okay, is about,
That's total comp is 86 if you include health.
okay, if you include health.
Again, yeah, I'm throwing a dart. So
Yeah.
Thank you, Larry.
step 6, master plus 15.
So master plus 15, so I guess that's one of my concerns is that you're kind of stepping over a lot of the experienced teacher level. And so I just want to put that out there. Rebecca, I see your hand.
Oh, yes, I'm gonna.
I think Nancy was before me.
I'm sorry, Nancy, then Rebecca. and
Yeah,
then
I
Bill.
had put my hand down. I'm just not sure what this person would be doing. I don't know about adding more to classes, teachers. I don't know. I'm just not sold on it yet. And was this Craig's idea?
Yeah, it was Craig's idea, correct.
I'm just not quite sure what they'd be doing and how schools would, and if our principals feel that this is a good thing to try to get into their school, because the day's broken up so much already. I just don't know.
Would any of the principals like to answer that question?
Yeah, because we did talk about this.
I'll speak to it. When David shared it with us, we were working with Craig, and it was at a part where it was going to be shared in classroom education and nutrition and programming of the food harvest of the month and promoting the different farm to table pieces with nutrition and health education standards and some nutrition standards in our lowest grades for part of the day. So it was kind of a shared position. So we were looking at it as classroom teacher role from our perspective for part of the day. And for us, with our students having enough or a variety of specials and having health education and nutrition education at the lower grades is something that is interesting to us.
Okay. Thank you.
Do you want to also take a stab at it?
So take a stab.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. So I think the way, as I understood it, was very similar to what Colleen was thinking, which is it's almost a blend of putting our health education, part of our health education, which is the nutrition part of health education, as well as the farm to school work, the harvest of the month work, and connecting them with the physical education with what's happening right there for them in the moment.
Yep.
So that they have a better understanding of the value of their experience in eating. What I'm not sure I'm clear about, and I'm sure over time we can hash some details out, is where that time comes from for the students, how that gets integrated with the classroom teachers or the learning environment, because I think as Nancy said, it can be pretty choppy when they're all over the place. But I'd love to hear from Craig, kind of his vision about this in a big picture thing, because I think there's a lot of value in saying we don't have a farm school coordinator or a wellness coordinator, a health coordinator, and a harvest of the month, right? Putting all those pieces together so that the kids are talking about what they're actually eating makes a whole lot of sense when we talk about where kids developmentally are. I just don't necessarily see how it fits into the system as it is now, so they can do that across all the schools. But that's, I think, something somebody else has put a lot of thought into already that I just haven't.
Yes, Larry.
Yeah, I think it's important that if you do decide at the SU level to move forward with this position, like Jennifer just said, for all the schools, it would need to be clear to that person who's being hired that if it's going to be set up like a special, that they may be at Weathersfield at Tuesday at 1 o'clock, and then Albert Bridge at Tuesday at 9 a.m. and then at Wednesday at, for actual classes, in addition to the other community outreach and other work that would be done more in concert with the food services program. So I think that person would need to know what they're signing up for.
Yeah.
And it's not an office job. It's a job where they would be with kids. I think that needs to be clear to whoever, if you move forward with this.
It's not an office job.
Make it clear,
That's a good point.
they're getting what they're expecting.
Yeah.
Because, they can't say, well, I don't have time for this. I can't go see Albert Bridge at third graders at 9 a.m. Well, you have to, because that's the schedule.
Right.
Because it's the kid's schedule.
Right.
So just my 2 cents.
Thank you. Bill, you're next. And
Okay, I did have a couple of questions.
I'm sorry, Rebecca. It's your hand got put down and then put back up.
No problem. When we discussed this at the supervisory union, it left me with some questions. And as someone who has been in the system, I knew that students were exposed to health and wellness and nutrition K through 12. I knew that because I would visit some of these classes, just trying to get a sense of what students were being exposed to in terms of health and wellness. So I knew that there was the home economics department that provided this information for students in the middle schools, and I'm not sure about the lower schools. In the high schools, it was the health teacher who did a piece on nutrition, who did a piece on wellness, and so Nancy's question just makes me think again, where is that time going to come from? A lot of the teachers have their curriculums already in place, and I know that they are flexible, and I also know that many of the teachers I worked with would bring in speakers. They would bring in nutritionist specialists and so on and so forth from the outside who love doing this sort of work and sharing with the students. So I did have questions about a full-time position to do this sort of work, and also wondered if there was even conversation with other teachers that do present this curriculum to students about their ideas. And so that was one of my concerns, and I don't know. I don't know if this position should be full-time. I don't know. Maybe we would want to consider it part-time. I don't know, but I think that if some questions were answered, then it can be determined whether it should be part-time, full-time. But that was my comment and my concerns.
Thank you, Rebecca. Okay, according to my list, Bill is next.
Can you hear me now?
We
Okay, I
can.
see my little lines. So I think I'm just adding on to what has already been said. And a lot of times in education, you have to view the school day as a plate, and a plate that is fairly full. And so if you add something to a plate, then something else comes off. That's not exactly how it works, but basically, unless you can integrate something into what's already being taught and multi-layer it, you're going to be pushing something off to be adding this other thing onto it. And that if you are successfully integrating it, then basically what you're doing is you're training the staff that's already there to use these topics and bring it together. So I don't see this as at this point as a teaching position to add another teaching program to the school. I'm not saying that it's not a good idea to highlight some of this expertise in some level of administration so that that level of expertise can then be helping teachers integrate it down at the lower levels. But you can't overstuff a plate. And I think basically this is a very new lunch program for the Windsor schools. And so I think we just, at this point, let's sort of get more comfortable with it, make it more understanding, and have the discussion on the building level or on the district level. What do teachers think? What do they think they could do with it? This is being presented as a educational opportunity. Before I would endorse hiring an extra person, I would like to hear that the discussion has happened in spreading that vision into the educational staff first.
Thank you, Bill. Amy?
Thank you. And along with what Bill said, it's also a reminder of what Larry said, that this person wouldn't be working just for Mount Escutney School District or just for Heartland or just for Weathersfield. They would be coordinating nutrition, education, and farm to school, farm to table information throughout the supervisory union. So if there is going to be discussion and feedback from our professional staff, it should be at the supervisory union level, and we should hear from all of the different school buildings. And I'm just also curious. I was informed by that there have been some staffing shortages overall in the at the different schools. Maybe I don't know about Heartland and Weathersfield, but at Windsor, in terms of the food service people who are working day to day, and just wondering how much effort is being put into making sure we're fully staffed so that Craig and company can focus more on the overall program instead of serving food in the food lines, which is good. I mean, he's in touch with the kids, but at the same time, he's got a full day as well.
I can answer that, Amy. I meet with Craig weekly, and right now the food service program is fully staffed. They have one person out on medical leave, and hoping that person will return eventually. But as far as positions now, they are fully staffed.
That's recent though.
Yes. So.
Yep. And also,
Okay, thank
David, if
you.
to sort of to put in my 2 cents in there, in working with the food department, we are addressing this issue in our support staff negotiations as well.
Correct. Yeah, correct.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else have any comments about the lunch coordinator?
The only other thing I'll say is I whispered to Larry, he needs to get on the road here, but he's going to talk with Craig again. This came up a while ago with Craig, and it was prior to him being fully staffed. I mean, I think Larry can have another conversation. And of course, the budget committee, the SU budget committee, will have another conversation on Friday about this. I know Craig's original vision, do all of the things that everybody just said now, essentially, the farm to table piece, the curriculum piece, the nutritional piece, all of those pieces, that was his original vision, to have somebody that could focus on that. But
And I think the SU budget we presented in October, we're going to go back to it in November, right?
Yeah.
So the budget committee, which Rebecca is the Mount Scottney representative, we can make a recommendation to this, and I will have information by the Friday meeting, the budget committee meeting,
Yeah.
David. And then so
Okay.
that'll help you guys make a decision.
I'm glad
at
you
the SU
remembered
level.
to put it on the agenda. That's great. Yeah. And we're going to make sure Heartland talks about it tomorrow night too.
Aaron Rockwood, I see your hand, and I heard your blue.
Hi, yes, I was just wondering if there was ever a conversation on whether an SU-wide mental health clinician might be something that we might be interested in, or a school-based child clinician. I can see, SU-wide, we have a lot of kids right now that are struggling, and so I think it would be beneficial to put that on the table. I think that's definitely something that's, needed.
Yeah, and those kinds of things too, Aaron, I think, and Katie, you can correct me, but I think those are somewhat already covered through Idea B and special education. Those, and we are looking at those, those SU-wide clinicians beefing up support in those areas.
Are we talking like mental health clinicians? Or are we talking social emotional support workers? Because that's two totally different things.
Mental health clinicians, actual clinical people that can work with our kids.
We have 3 mental health clinicians through HCRS and spread out throughout the district to serve as many kids as they can on their caseloads. It used to be exclusively special ed, but it is no longer. We've used ESSER funds, and we're trying to make sure that we expand access to those clinicians. So, and if it is constantly, Aaron, I will say a conversation that we're continually to revisit. How many is enough? And I can see from talking to our region, we are really lucky. We're fully staffed with the 3 we have.
So those are through HCRS, though. A student would have to be under the HCRS umbrella in order to access those HCRS clinicians. And so if we do have students in our school that are not connecting with HCRS, or we have parents for some reason or another that do not want to connect with HCRS, those kids are not getting services. And we have a lot of those students underneath our building that don't have HCRS services and are not connected to HCRS. So therefore they're not receiving that. And
well, we give them the options too, but we are also looking at part of our ARP Idea B funds to expand to an in-house person as well. So, and there are ways, but thank you for, that's something that has kept coming up.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification, both of you. I appreciate that. It's a huge problem, as we all are acutely aware. Rebecca, do you want to speak to the lunch, or do you want to speak to the, what Erin just brought up.
I wanted to respond to what Erin just brought up. One of the things that I have been excited about, not that I get excited about a special education budget, but is the efforts that Katie has made to try and bring in these mental health clinicians. And I think those are some of the questions that we were looking at and talked about, and saying, how do students who, as you mentioned, do not want to fall under the HCRS umbrella access those services. So it's something that's ongoing, and I just appreciate the attention that Katie has been giving to this. And thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you, Rebecca. Jennifer?
I also just want to speak quickly that, Erin, we've looked at that in our budget, and we have that part of our discussion for executive session, to look at when students need supports. They're not accessing HCRS, not an IEP, not title funded. So we're looking at that as part of our discussion, as well as to provide capacity. So that's on the radar.
Okay. Anybody else? We've got to scoot along here. We're falling behind. Okay, next comes the anti-racism. I believe I said B, right?
You wanted to move that up, right?
Yep. So let me just take a look at who is here still. Jeff Rogers is here.
Yeah.
Is Ethan here? Maybe not. I don't think he made it. Okay. Well, let me begin with a couple of updates on what I was tasked with this past month, which was connecting with both the West Windsor Select Board and the Jedi Committee, Windsor Jedi Committee, which is the Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee, which is a committee of the Windsor Select Board. I did both of those things. Actually met with our West Windsor Select Board during our last supervisory union meeting. And I invited them to coordinate with us some on various different levels. One level is adopting a welcoming statement, which has been adopted by several communities around the state. I think now we're up to 28 communities around the state under the tutelage of Al Wakefield. It was adopted by Rutland and Pittsburgh and many other communities. And the Jedi Committee said that they would seriously consider it, and the West Windsor Select Board said they would look at it. West Windsor Select Board said they would be glad to participate in any types of forums that we have, or any educational endeavors that we have for both our board members, as we discussed before, having for board members and parents and community to all kind of take part in this stuff at the same time. And at the Jedi Committee, it was I got the thumbs up from West Windsor, but the Jedi Committee, they had a very robust meeting, which began with a presentation from Courtney Hillhouse of Manascutney Prevention Partnership. And one of the things that I would like to request for our next meeting is to have that presentation made to our board, because it was some very startling numbers that she presented. And and I think I thought about writing down some of the numbers myself. They're easy to find online, and I'd be glad to share with you a link. But having Courtney Hillhouse narrate the presentation is actually much more valuable. I believe that we have here with us Jeff Rogers, who is, I can't see you, Jeff. But I saw your name on the side over there. He's the community outreach person for the Windsor Jedi Committee. And I told them that we'd like to work closely together. And my suggestion to you, the board, is that we create a space each month where we move the anti-racism part of our meeting up to the front of the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And that we create a space each month for somebody from Jedi to speak to our board. I committed to attending their meetings every month until the session starts, when I'm going to have to hand it off to somebody else from this board. Because I really just can't manage it when the session isn't on, but we can figure it out. I have confidence that we will figure it out. And what else am I forgetting? So that's what those things are. The Jedi Committee has, it seems like they've really got their sea legs. They're doing a lot of really good work. They're discussing having office hours and are you getting tired of your own breath?
We have can't. Get behind this mask.
And as David mentioned, we have been, we continue to work in our group, which includes community members, parents still, staff still, board members still, and administrators still. And we have already combed through the policies and procedures of our anti-racism policy. And now we're breaking it down into actionable steps. Katie Ahern came up with a great one for our group this past week that we were really excited about. And I think next Monday, is that our last meeting with Melissa Crum?
That's our internal meeting without Melissa. Then once we get it together, we'll go with Melissa. One more meeting with Melissa. Oh, yeah.
Well, no, it's not that. I'm just, my time is getting.
I know. January's coming.
Okay. And that's where that is at the moment. Yeah. I think that's it right now. Does anybody else have anything else to add?
I like the idea, though, of having anti-racism be a separate item on our agenda, so we address it every month. And
Also work with the
have
Jedi
speakers,
Committee.
whether it's Courtney or that would be great.
Jeff, I see your hand and I heard your bloop.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And thank you so much for your visit to our committee last week. And you gave us so much information and so many ways to collaborate. We're really excited about it. I think all as a committee are. I know Ethan had asked, he said that he was going to very much try to be here tonight, but that he might be late. And so he asked me to attend, which I was planning to anyway. And just so encouraged by our school board and all that you're doing. Yes, a lot of the information that was presented to us from the report that you mentioned by Courtney was really heartbreaking, particularly in reference to our BIPOC children and our and kids who are, have expressed themselves differently in terms of sexual identity. And I mean, the statistics in terms of indicators for risk and harm were really high. And I don't know any other word to express it except to say heartbreaking. And there's just so much work that we all can do together. So I know the Jedi Committee would be really happy to participate in the meetings, and the cross fertilization, the feedback that we can do together. for the benefit of our children would be immense. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jeff. And thank you for being here with us tonight. I think it really we can do a lot of good together. So that's all good.
Do you want me to reach out to Courtney, Elizabeth, and see if she can be at our next meeting to give that same?
Yeah, would you mind?
About how long is that presentation, would you say?
Jeff, how long would you say that presentation went for?
I think the presentation itself was maybe 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes. Yeah.
But it's very evocative, so it you know, there will be plenty of questions.
I will reach out.
You know, I mean, we've all
We know her
three of us
really
in this
well.
room have been part of the
Absolutely.
prevention partnership. So, do we want to include Courtney McKay?
I think Courtney Hill has to replace the start, but can we invite Courtney McKay?
Okay.
I have great data and information.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions or comments or additional facts? Anything I'm forgetting? Davis McGraw, I see your hand.
Yeah, thanks, Elizabeth, and thanks, Jeff, for being here. It's good to see you in this space. I wondered if there was any discussion. I know that one of the kind of other shared goals between this board and JEDI is to have some student involvement. I know with the JEDI committee, and I don't know if that had come up in conversation yet about how that might be sort of brought up within the school community. And then I know also that the idea, I think, in the anti-racism curriculum and in that plan, there was talk too of having a little bit more sort of cross-pollination between school-based groups and town-based groups. So I was just wondering if that had been kind of talked over yet, or if that's something that you're planning on discussing more.
It really hadn't. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to start speaking before you finished. I really apologize.
Real good.
It really hadn't yet. I basically had been on a deposition all day long and had to be very careful about what I said all day. And by the time I got to the poor JEDI committee, they just had to listen to me unfiltered for a while because I was there both as a school board member and as a legislator to kind of invite them to do different things. And so it really was just an introductory meeting. But as you can see, areas where we can collaborate. Jeff?
We have put out an invitation to the school, and the school has invited someone. I believe Ethan, sometime in the next week or so, will be meeting with, at least with some a number of classes online to explain what JEDI is and the role in the town and how a student could participate on the committee. So that is in process.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, it's great to hear. Thanks, Jeff.
Anybody else? Okay, well, this is just a burgeoning partnership, but I think it's going to be really fantastic. So thank you. And thank you so much for being with us tonight. I'm going to move on though, because we're already at 8:28. We're not very far through this. The items of discussion are pretty simple from here on.
Yeah, I think so.
Next was the
Transportation.
Oh, the transportation, that was really just to touch back. I was looking through my notes from the last couple of meetings. And Wendy Moody had brought that up during our last meeting. And I think Bill also made a comment about it during our last meeting. And that had to do with transportation of students from our district to other, say, technical schools or other schools that we don't necessarily, they're not special ed. We don't necessarily provide transportation for And we can ask you, David, to follow up with more information about how big of a population that is and what can be done about it.
Yeah, so if I understand the, the question, and I may not, but, and Bill, you can help me out here a little bit, but because I think you have some background too with this, maybe at Hartford, maybe not, but now the only transportation I'm aware of is for tech students. Outside the special ed realm, it is for tech students. And right now, certainly Colleen and Kate could clarify those numbers, but we've got a number of kids who go to the Hartford Tech Center. And we do provide transportation. We get reimbursed for a large share of that transportation.
What about Springfield
And Springfield,
or River Valley?
No, we've never had a request for River Valley. We've had requests for Springfield, and I think that at that time somehow we worked the transportation out. I don't remember how we worked it out, but our designated tech center is the Hartford Tech Center. And that's where we're obligated to pay for transportation. We are not obligated. But I remember one student maybe 3 or 4 years ago that wanted to go to Springfield for some reason. And we were able to work that out. I forget whether, because remember, by the time they get to the tech center, generally they're juniors and seniors, and they have transportation, they have cars, and I think we worked it out that way with the tech center. Yeah, but right now, I think basically all of our high school students are at the Hartford Tech Center.
Rebecca, I see your hand.
I think in a prior conversation, Wendy had raised about either her son attending Springfield Tech Center, and I think that something was worked out. But she said, I may be wrong, but that wasn't always the case. I do have a problem with the fact that, and I know, David, that most of your students that attend Hartford have to be juniors or seniors, but some of them can be sophomores. That for some students, that becomes the gateway to remaining in high school. And so I know in the past counselors have made those sort of accommodations, and the students are definitely are capable. But I do have a problem with the fact that students would the cost to go to a tech center to acquire skills for students that potentially may not go on to college, that potentially would fall on them because they have availability to a car. I would want to make sure that any student that does request, be it sophomore, junior, or senior, knows that they have the option of being provided with transportation to the tech center and back. And I know that it's not easy because Hartford's schedule is very different than Windsor's schedule, but I think that that we owe it to our students who are trying to obtain some skills that will allow them to access employment without going on to post-secondary education.
Yeah, and we do transport all sophomores, juniors, and seniors that want to access those tech centers. We do provide transportation. They are all transported. The bigger issue is what Elizabeth said, is whether or not you could also do that with Springfield or some of the other tech centers. I don't think so. I think you have to use your designated tech center, or else the student has to then become somehow responsible for the transportation. But I think we've tried to work that out through reimbursements, but right now we have a designated tech center, and we do provide transportation.
Wait 1 second. David, can I open a window?
Sure.
Do you mind? Please do.
Actually, you might want to open that, because that screen is ripped, so. Yeah,
It is really hot in here.
I don't want those mosquitoes in here.
Those November mosquitoes.
We don't want mosquitoes in November. Yeah, that's perfect. Elizabeth's opening windows, so that's a good sign.
It's heating up in here.
I think Bill and Wendy have their hands up.
Okay. Bill? Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. I transportation to Hartford works very well. The other question, I think one reason this came up is because I was having a discussion with an administrator of the Cornish School District, and they were saying that up until COVID, it was really um, nice that Windsor and forward thinking of Windsor to send a school bus to Cornish Elementary to pick up high school students that went to Windsor. And she felt that a lot of students chose Windsor from Cornish because they were at it was nice for parents because when they would drop those high school students off at the end of the day, or that then they could take the Cornish bus to home, so that there would be a full complete transportation of basically school to door, with just Windsor providing a bus to Cornish Elementary. And then so my email to David, and I'd like to follow up on this as well, because I'm a data guy, is if we've lost or we may lose some Cornish students tuition for them going directly to, say, Hartford, as opposed to coming to Windsor and then going to the tech center at Hartford. I did notice an uptick of ninth graders going to Hartford, not significantly, but that was the extent of my questions about the busing issue. And I think basically that that the busing issue stopped because of COVID.
Thank you for that input, Bill. Wendy, I see your hand.
Hi, yes, thanks. Just to clarify, so my son is the student you're discussing. He went to Springfield for a tech program, not just arbitrary. It's not just he wanted to go there instead. They are the only tech center that offered the programming that he desired, as well as they offer IT down there and they offer horticulture. Lucky for us, I think it came up in the budget discussion. I just felt like as a family, we could take that burden. But I know there are other families who would like their student to go to that tech center and they're not drivers. And so transportation is a real burden for them, and something that may very well prevent another student in the future from being able to do that. I don't know that there's enough volume to provide a bus or transportation at that level, but I would think you might want to look at a model of some sort of reimbursement system or working with those families to make sure that, you know, there's some sort of solution out there, that this is not something that, you know, that's they are not allowed to do because of transportation being that stumbling block. As I said, Bryce was able to go. He transported himself to and from school every day. He had his own vehicle, so it was not a problem for us, but I know that that could be an issue for another family down the line. So I think that's where the conversation came up.
Thank you for that clarification, Wendy. I really appreciate that. Bill, have at it.
We can't hear you, Bill. But I love the gestures.
Might have hit that mute button.
Double clicked. I double clicked. I want to hop off Wendy's point and sort of to point out that, you know, the fact that budget wise, I believe it's 83% of VOTEC tuition is paid directly by the state. It's somewhere between 83 and 85%, or maybe even 89%. So that encouraging students to go to VOTEC is financially beneficial to the school district. And so that's a pretty big incentive for kids, for us to encourage children to go to technical centers. Not just the fact that it may tie in with a personal interest that they have, And so I would support transportation to Springfield if that tipping point of the number of students that were going would have a a benefit from providing transportation.
And I think, as Wendy said, I think the only way a student could access the Springfield Tech Center was if the program was not offered at the Hartford Tech Center. And I think that's what happened with Wendy's son. Just to be clear, but we could certainly look at the sophomore class. We do send sophomores. Just see, look at the difference between those two programs and see. I have not had any requests that have gone unmet, but maybe we're just not getting the request.
Amy, please weigh in.
For a few years, although it was a few years ago, I was on the advisory board for the Hartford Tech Center. And it was my understanding that students were not allowed to drive themselves to the school. So I guess the Springfield and what Wendy's son was able to do is because it was a different situation. But
Right.
in general, our students who go to the tech center are required to ride that bus to and from the program.
That's correct. There are some exceptions,
unless under special circumstances.
but they're rare.
Rare
Well,
special circumstances.
They have to be very, very special.
Right,
Correct.
exactly.
And agreed upon by sending school, Hartford, and parents.
Okay, anybody else want to weigh in on this topic? If not, I'm going to put a little check. Oh yeah, follow up on social media use and misuse. That's next on our agenda.
Right, exactly.
Sorry. What? I know. Sorry. Virginia, on our Virginia.
I know the expertise, like Colleen said, and Kate, the expertise that we've used with both faculty and students has been, because there is some, special training that
I just wanted to follow up. I just wanted to make sure that
that's on the
did
loop.
follow up
Right?
on all these things, like about this is about that incident that took place at Windsor School last week, or the Friday before it last.
With a student, you mean?
With a student who made some remarks about underclassmen.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, I think we could follow up on that, but we probably should do that in executive session also.
Okay. I just wondered whether there was any kind of general message that was put out to students,
The students
at that time.
after that incident. Colleen and Kate, do you know whether or not there was anything generally stated to those classes?
We met with, we put a general statement out to our parents, and we have follow-up meetings with classes to be coming up. We met with student representatives and staff representatives to discuss together concerns initially.
Right.
Okay, thank you. And the next is staff chronic stress, which I noticed has been brought up a couple of times in our last, or it's been brought up in our last two meetings. And when I wrote this, when I added this to the agenda, it was on the day that the House Committee on Education was hearing how awful it is around the state from Jeff Francis.
Yeah.
So I know it's not up to us, but us as a board, but it really worries me.
It's a challenge. Yeah.
And I wondered whether there are any special measures that are being undertaken to help with staff and all staff and administrators.
I think I can talk a little bit about this between the two buildings. I think a couple of things are coming to sort of confluence. One is that we're continuing a pandemic, and there's the sense that we're trying to move forward without acknowledging that we're still in the middle of a pandemic. And so I think that creates a sense of we're supposed to be achieving certain things when really what we're trying to do is just keep our heads above water. So there's this kind of pull because everybody wants to move ahead, but then there's the reality of the situation. I think a part of what sets the stage for the reality of the situation is we're struggling to find appropriately different positions. And we have a lot of absenteeism, and not people who usually are absent or want to be absent or anything like that. But we're still dealing with the fact that if you're sick for more than a day and a half, right, you're out. Yeah. You're out until you get your test back. And so what we've got, I mean, just at Albert Bridge, we've got, let's say, on the average, we've got 15 full-time staff there. And we have, I was looking at the data, we have over 4 people out on the average a day. When you're talking about 15 staff, that's moving parts all the time. And when you have moving parts like this, and it's going to be just a larger scale for Windsor, right? Yeah. So if you've got all these moving parts, you've got kids who don't have consistency, kids who are already stressed and struggling because they also are living through a pandemic, and they're experiencing the stresses that their parents are struggling with still, there's teachers, and there's always this change of newness of who's supporting them, who their teacher is. I was talking with one specialist over at Windsor who, gets, and this is the way it happens, right? You've got people who are out, so what are you going to do with the kids? So she's got classes who show up, kind of blending classes all of a sudden. And all of these things create change. And change, we know, is stress. Stress being good when it's tolerable and it's predictable and routine and within, right, a stopping point. But what we have is this kind of chronic stress that keeps throwing up. And so I think through the lens of, Dave Melnick and Stuart Outlaw, that we think about what's going on for our brains is that we've been under this for a while. And we don't have the freshness that we showed up with last year, right? Last year, everybody's really excited to see each other because we hadn't seen each other. And we had a predictability of, we just got to wait for this vaccine. And we had some pretty, I think by the time we started school, there's stability in the expectations, right? Now we're dealing with constant changes of who gets to stay in, who has to leave because who's vaccinated, who's not, what age groups. So there's a lot of stress that comes with that. On top of that, we're trying to move forward, and the staff definitely want to move forward with things like improving the curriculum and instruction. But that gets put on the back burner because the teacher's out or the support's out to help these kids. So I think all of this puts us in a position, and we've got some staff shortages, we've got chronic absenteeism, not by one person or for any fault of theirs, but just because of the rules of the game right now. And then the fact that we're all pretty tired of the pandemic, I think creates this situation where people are just feeling worn out. And I think what we're trying to do, and what we've been trying to do, is first of all, give them voice, hear it. And we have, I think, in our supervisory union across the board, put a lot of investment in understanding trauma and understanding what experiences like this do for us. So just trying to build relationships and support relationships and reach out to each other, I think is really the best we can do right now, because there's just no fixing you have to be out because you have a cough for a day and a half, right? So we're just trying to say, how can we work together? What do you need? How can I support you? Here's what I need. We're just trying, I think, across the board to talk with each other and say, help when we need help, and reach out to people and say, I think you may need some help. Can I help you? And right now, I think that's about the best we're going to be able to do. And Kate and Colleen, feel free to step in there. But this is just my perspective, working between not just these two schools, but talking with the other schools and some of the staff there with the trauma-informed lens and that team, that while we're trying to take some stressors off when we can, there's some things we just can't take off. And so just remembering that relationships is the one thing that helps us walk through all of it.
Yeah. Thank you. I really, really appreciate that.
And hiring people. Right, we're still
Yeah.
reaching out, trying to find the right people for the jobs.
David, can you leave that door open?
Sure, does that help
Yeah.
when we get the cross breeze?
Nothing like a cross breeze. Okay, Colleen, anything else I should,
It is
you want to
74.
add?
No, I would say one of the best gifts we have been given this year is the gift of time. And that Friday half day allowed Colleen and I to go meet with a lot of different groups. And it's kind of clear what is missing is kind of the fun. And we're in this unique position in Windsor where the first time in many years, our whole staff doesn't even know each other because there's been so many new hires. There's been so much isolation in not leaving your pod and everyone is so busy. So we decided first starting with our students, particularly our high school students, to try and bring back some fun. So that's why we went to the student council meeting and asked what kind of ideas. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Oh, what kind, you all froze for a sec. What kind of ideas of things that they wanted to bring back and how we could bring fun back to our kids. And then we had kind of that same conversation with our staff. And it was sad to hear that some of them couldn't even name the people who worked on quote unquote the other side. So this week we have parent teacher conferences. So in order to meet those needs, we had suspended other meetings. So on Wednesday, our staff meeting is a contest that one of our staff members is running, Jen Townsend. I think it's going to be a scavenger hunt and it's going to be mixed teams across grade levels. And we're going to do that. And then in 2 weeks, our staff meeting is going to have, Colleen and I are going to bring food because that's always helpful. And we're going to have like another fun activity with prizes and things like that. So we're trying to, make work a place to go again, to not only do your job, but to have connections with people you consider friends that maybe you were missing those connections with.
Yeah, that's really big. Thank you. Thank you. Rebecca, I see your hand.
I wonder if the principals would consider having someone I come in and do maybe some restorative yoga, 5-10 minutes a few times during the week, make it available to staff, something to just like loosen you up. I'm not saying a half an hour or an hour. I know the teachers just don't have that time, but something that can just really help them relax before going back into, I shouldn't say the fray, but going back into, working in the best way that they possibly can. I think that it must be really hard to just keep going physically, emotionally. I love what's being suggested and what's being done. And I'm just wondering if we can think out of the box, because to help those that are coming in and caring for the students and being there, restore as they're dealing day to day with the shortages, with everything else that comes along with running a school. I also want to say, as was said earlier, my hats off to you. I just can't imagine what it's like. And I continue to just send out positive vibes, to all the schools and the principals and the administrators. Hard times, but you're incredible. So thank you.
We get your positive vibes, Rebecca. We thank you. I just wanted to say we're kind of all on different spectrums. Everybody has a different amount of capacity. Our adults in the building, some of us are able, some of our staff is able to take on more, and others need more support. Some are veteran teachers, some are younger, some of us are more affected by absences, some of us are less affected by that. But I think we can't speak enough about what a great teamwork, what a great team we have, and how well we support each other. and we're thankful for our recent new hire of a perma-sub who is extremely flexible and able to jump from kindergarten to high school to middle school on any given day. And those make it put a lot of ease on our teachers, knowing that we've got great perma-subs in there who are able to be flexible and go from place to place. And we do our very best to support each other. So I love the idea of some yoga, but for some people, that's not going to do it for them. We're all on different levels. Our students are on different levels. Our adults are on different levels of what the need is. I feel like the best we can do is just keep supporting each other in the teamwork that we are doing. But you know, some of us do access yoga. And when you mentioned that, it reminded me that someone recently told me that they are getting certified to do yoga and would be interested in doing it for free for our teachers. So I will try to remember who that is and grab that person.
We like free.
What's that?
We like free. Free is good.
Thank you, Colleen. Okay, anybody else have any questions or comments? Our last item before we slip into executive session is community forum preparations.
Right, so that's what I was saying, is these two separate types of forms, right?
I
So
don't think we had made that, I think that there was some, I'm glad you made that distinction because I
Right.
think there was some confusion there.
I think that, and that's, Angie said after that meeting that she felt the same thing, that maybe we were confusing the forums. But that has a very specific, the forum that's coming up next week has a very specific purpose. But this board, and we can talk about it now, or we can, you know, I think you wanted, whether it was some of the anti-racism issues, some of the issues around curriculum, the strategic plan, and there were some things this board had talked about having a separate forum
We did.
at some point.
Yep.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any strong feelings about what kind of forum we should start with? Rebecca, speak now.
Well, yes, I do. I think that we as a board have been talking about the strategic plan, and it's a 3-year plan. I think it would be a great opportunity to share with the community what we see what we see happening in the school over the next 3 years, where we see where, you know, how it aligns with our budget, how it aligns with our SR funds. So I think that can be an important one. And in there, you can include policies and supporting work on the policies. But I think the strategic plan is probably a good one for us to start talking to the community about. Yeah.
I think we talked about like 2 or 3 of them, like quarterly,
We did.
trying to do something like that.
Well,
And that's part of the
At
strategic
minimum,
plan.
we said.
At minimum, right.
That was our claim.
And part of it, and I know everybody's busy, but part of it, you know, from a board perspective is just having a subgroup that could do some planning and you know, presenting the strategic plan and.
Oh, here we go. We had student involvement. We had Bill's one about early childhood education or daycare or childcare and its effects on parents. Just having a forum about childcare and right, Bill? That was one of your ideas.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I just not so much to educate parents, but to have a discussion about what their needs and what they would be excited about if we offered something that could get more students within the education system locally instead of farming him out to mostly the white, the Upper Valley.
I think it's a good idea to, the November 8th one, I know is a presentation and then an ability to ask questions about it, but I think the whole part of the point was to try to increase community engagement, right? And so having this year forum on certain topics, maybe it'll be a good idea to have a forum, meaning like minimal level presentation and then just facilitated questions and answers on the strategic plan, on the on childcare, and what's hopefully coming in the coming weeks, and how that'll affect our state. And
probably we have enough internal expertise on the strategic plan, childcare. I bet we could get somebody from Bright Futures, some way to just engage the community in that conversation.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. And I mean, at the very least, if we're talking about budgets and all that's entailed in that, if the big spending bills go through in the next week and a half, it includes a childcare bill, what would the implications for Act 130 be for us? So
that would be huge. Yeah.
So let's try to plan one for January.
I bet we could do that.
I don't, actually I probably have more bandwidth.
Angie calls it the bandwidth, right? Angie calls it the bandwidth. But yeah.
We could do one in December for the strategic plan. I mean, I could do one on the strategic plan.
Yeah, because you were part of the writing.
Because we're really just facilitating. We're not having to have a big PowerPoint or anything like that.
We could have a couple of slides where we talk about it.
Yeah.
I think the other thing you find out with community forums, and we're finding that out because we already did the first ESSER forum in, I think we kicked it off in Heartland, right? I mean, people are just so busy. I mean, they don't engage like they used to. So we have to figure out a way to get people there.
Well, that's
maybe some kind of a raffle or something really exciting.
Well, we'll
figure that out.
We'll figure that out. We'll call up people and invite them.
Yeah.
Instead of just having. Thanks, Davis.
Yeah. So when it comes to scheduling, I might just offer a word of caution against trying to do anything in December. I think that and this is kind of an armchair opinion here, but just based on what I've seen with the past couple, with entering into the holiday season, I think that after things were really closed down last year, I think people are going to potentially be even busier this year. And if our goal is community engagement, I'd worry a little bit about trying to put more in the month of December because people are already stretched pretty thin then. I think that January might be a wiser choice for that reason.
I was saying it selfishly because I know that my time is going to be really non-existent.
Yeah, no, I totally respect that, but I just know if we really want to get people in, I know that December can be a really tough month to have people add more to their schedule. So yeah, if the goal is to get that engagement, that might be a tough one.
Or like, early January 1st, 2nd, or 3rd.
We'll do it on a Monday, which is good for you, right, generally? We'll do it.
Monday's my meetings night.
Is it really?
Yeah. For my school board.
Oh, I thought legislative. Okay,
Yeah, no. I tried to get everything out Monday nights for school board stuff. I appreciate that, Davis. I do. Amy, do you want to weigh in on timing and content?
Well, we also have to keep in mind that we're going to be presenting our budget, and those will be in meetings as well that we hope to engage the public.
True.
And
that would be a good time, actually.
When there are too many meetings, people just they have to pick which meeting they want to go to.
It's true.
So we have to decide
I
How
haven't
we want
come
to
to that.
engage our public. What information do we want to share? And perhaps with strategic plan, we could do the budget at the same time, because we would be showing how our budget is supporting our strategic plan. And I think what our administrators put together last 2 weeks, whenever that meeting was, that was just amazing. The information that was shared at that meeting.
Do you mean at the last?
How the budget was supporting our strategic plan.
That was really great. That's what I was just going to say, is that it would be great to have a strategic plan budget presentation.
Yeah.
And that's why it would be, and that would be in February. That's why it would be good to have one in December. Just saying.
Don't listen to her, Davis.
It would be low stress, and it would be just a discussion, a parent's discussion about childcare. You know,
That's one way to go.
probably wouldn't have lots of people. It might have, plenty of people, but
Bill could lead it.
Bill could lead it. Bill could facilitate.
He's good at that.
It's an area of interest. So it could be a fruitful discussion. We don't all have to come. We could all come. But I think it would be good to hold our own feet to the fire on following through.
I wonder if you could do it for like the hour before a board meeting, the December board meeting, just 5:30 or 6:30. Is that not a good time?
No. That's too, we're already at 9 o'clock. We haven't even gotten it.
I know.
Yet. I can't do that. Katie, I see your hand.
So quickly, the early childhood team has been meeting and talking about doing exactly what you're talking about, to survey families, as well as a part of a corrective action plan based on some feedback we had from some state, from data from 2019, 2020, that what I ran across your desk this morning, David, is part of increasing our local capacity for childcare and pre-K programs for all students. So this is actually part of an action plan that we have to do. So Bill, I'll volunteer to help, because we were planning on trying to figure out how to send out surveys and get information, and this all is very timely. Maybe I can go back and do some edits on that plan, but the early childhood team is very eager to engage in this conversation as well with community partners, because that's who we were going to reach out to as well as our state resources.
Yeah, I think we should call people.
Yeah.
And tell them about it over the phone.
So you want to set a date, or do you want?
I think, Bill, it's really up to you. Do you have the bandwidth to run a forum on childcare along with the ECE team at Windsor, and maybe Let's Grow Up Kids?
Well, this has been something I've been pushing for a few years now, so I'd be willing to make it part of my bandwidth, just because I feel very strongly about this as a need in the area, and my work at Hartford brings up the point of how many students in that school district has a hard time finding preschool spots.
Yeah.
All over the state.
And all the preschool students I know that come from Windsor Southeast Supervisory Union up to the preschools that I help supervise within my data capacity. So yeah, I'd be willing to take this on. And whichever you will need.
13th is a good day.
No way. I was going to say Wednesday. What about Wednesday, December 1st?
That's coming up soon, but we could do that.
It's a month.
Wednesday's usually open.
What about Wednesday, December 1st, Bill?
Katie, is that too soon? How about Katie? Is that?
You really want to push December, don't you, Elizabeth?
I do, only because then the next one will be in February. We'll have the strategic plan and the budget.
Yeah, you'd have to do it early in December. Yeah.
I mean, as to Davis's point, it's like from the 10th onwards is just shot.
What time's a good time, Elizabeth?
I think the first is if you would work and anything past that first week would have difficulty. So it gets your December date and spaced out. And we can, my only concern would be about getting the word out and who we wanted to pull into this conversation to see about their availability, because it is slightly short notice in scheduling worlds.
But again, it's not like, it's supposed to be a facilitated forum, right? So it doesn't, it's low pressure. It's just a conversation. It could even be called a conversation about childcare.
Yep.
That's
less intimidating. I actually like that. Just to keep it sounds less formal that way. To get more people. So
well, let's shoot for Wednesday, December 1st. And Davis McGraw, I see your hand.
Whenever we end up doing this, I'm happy to keep coordinating with Windsor on Air and the town just to find the best spot for it. I don't know that the municipal space is going to be the best option going forward after this, but we are going to get to see how the technical setup works there. And that is something that I think might, and I'll have to check with Paula, but there might be some portability down to the Welcome Center. Some wires got crossed about that for this last one, but I guess that is heated throughout the winter, so that is a viable option.
That's a really nice space.
It is, yeah. And if we're not expecting tons and tons of people, it's a really comfortable space, and it's a pretty welcoming. It's the Welcome Center, right? It's a pretty warm and engaging space. So I'm happy for any of these to kind of work with Paula in the town and find some space that we can put these on.
Excellent.
Paula would help too, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Good. Well, let's work on that. I can engage in that myself as well in the next week or so, and we'll get it all hammered out. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Setting the next agenda real quick is MAP and Courtney Hill House.
Yep.
And our budget. And of course, the anti-racism and Jedi.
Let's do that again, just because our next meeting is on.
The first is Wednesday, we know.
So what were those items again? It was Courtney Hill House, right?
Yep, Courtney Hill House, if she can do it. Be great if she could do it.
We'll try.
And
then the other was the Jedi or anti-racism, right?
Anti-racism and Jedi. And then budget. I think we ought to leave it at that.
And budget, that's probably going to be a good agenda. Right
Yeah.
There, yeah.
Okay. Does anybody have anything else before I go through the roll call for executive session?
And that's on the 6th, right?
Yeah. Okay. I'll take a motion to enter executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Amy?
Aye.
Is that me?
Oh.
Oh, I can't hear half of it, but I'll just say aye.
Okay. So Bill says aye. Amy said aye. Davis, what about you?
Aye.
And Nancy, what about you?
Aye.
And Rebecca, what about you?
Aye.
And I am an aye. And so we will now stop recording and enter executive session.
Stop recording.